What's up, YouTube fam? Back again. We're here for part 2 on this utility knife build. I'll just show you. I've just got it back from heat treat not that long ago. So here we have, this is the one that we're doing. This is just another similar version but shorter that I got back. I just thought I'd show you that. Don't know if I showed it before or not, but anyway, that's a shorter one. And I also got my bushcrafting knives back too. So, as you can see, I tried to grind the bevel slightly higher, made a bit of a mess of it, to be honest. I shouldn't have. I didn't have an adjustable jig. I was just trying to freestyle it, and it didn't turn out too well, as you can see. So what I will do is I'll be regrinding this. I'll grind this flat, make sure it's flat to start with, both sides, and then I'll get my jig out and I'll adjust it so that I can grind this to hide this mark. So I'll probably take it up to about where it is just now, not much further, but I'll need to get some adjustable bolts in the bottom of my 90-degree jig so that I can tilt it up to the degrees that I need, which I'll determine off the angle finder. I've got a magnetic angle finder, and we'll give this a grind now that it's been heat treated. I've given it a quick sand. As you can see, I keep thinking about this hole at the back, and I keep thinking it's too close to the edge, and that if I do expose that hole when I put my handles on, it's going to look crap, because obviously it's closer to this edge than it is to this edge, you know. It's just my mistake. When I drilled it too far to this side. Thankfully the pins are okay, they're square. That's for 3mm brass that I'll be putting in there. And I've decided that what I'm going to do with these two knives is I have some black Kyanite pearl, so I'm going to use this green liner for this one, and obviously the blue liners for that one. And the beauty of that is, because these are quite short knives, yeah, this part here won't be put to waste, okay? Because what I'll manage to do with that is to get two small parts that I will put on edge round about here, and I'll put something different in the middle. So it might be like black pearl Kyanite, and then maybe a bit of red blood Kyanite in the middle, with the blue dividers to separate, you know, one on each side. But we'll get to that in a bit. Obviously this is the one we're building. I'll be doing the same with it because, you know, I don't like wasting materials, and I think it'll look quite cool. So like I say, I'll cut this off. Let me just show you. I'll just leave a little bit of excess to grind down, obviously. Probably cut it a bit here somewhere. And then I'll be able to do like 2 bits, like that wide hopefully, or thereabouts. And then like I say, it'll be like a colour, then a green divider, colour, green divider, colour, and it'll look epic. I'll super glue them together like I did with this last knife I did. What I did there was I just super glued this to the liner, other side of the liner to this as well, super glued it all, and then I put it onto the white liner here, clamped it down until it's set. When you do that, always make sure you clamp down the divider, because it can rise up out of the gap. If you're putting pressure on here and the glue's seeping along here, it's going to want to get out the easiest way. So the easiest way is up through that divider. That's the path of least resistance. So if it goes up past the divider there, it'll actually lift that red divider up off the liner, shall we say. And that's the last thing you want, because if you do that, then when you look down here at it, you'll see a gap between the red liner and the main liner of the knife, the white bit that's coming along here, obviously. And that's the last thing you want, because that would just look crap, okay? So bear that in mind when you're clamping them, that you need to clamp this down as well. The red divider needs to be clamped down as well to save it from migrating anywhere. So that'll be the next thing, deciding on which ones I'm putting on. My son is building a knife, so he wants to use, I've got another one of these green pearl Kyrenites scales. He wants to use that on his, so I won't be able to use the red one. I do, however, have a black pearl one, which is quite kind of subtle, but it's nice, and it would also contrast nicely with like a vivid colour in the middle, like an orange or a red or a green or something along that lines. I've also got like lime green scales, similar colour to this, and I've got like bright orange scales that are just a plain colour similar to this. But I'll maybe see if I can use a bit of something with a bit of pattern in it just to make it pop a little bit, And when I do that, obviously, I'll be joining it between the pins because I want the pins to kind of hold it in as well, yeah. So I'll probably do something like something similar to this, maybe. The black lines will be the liner, and then something different inside to contrast these bits. These two bits will be the same, yeah. In the front, don't know what I'm going to do with the design of the front, but I'll come up with something stunning, he says. Right, so that's what we're going to do next. I'm waiting for, I've got a table saw, so I've got an 80 tooth blade coming, and I'm hoping it'll come through this stuff, because when I try to cut it with a jigsaw, it's really pretty tough stuff to cut. It's meant to be like fiberglass, but I tell you what, it's hard going to get through it. I'm sure an angle grinder would probably do, but if you use an angle grinder, you're just going to end up melting it, So I'll see if the table saw's any better. And I've also got a set of scales that I need to rip in half in the table saw. So, like I say, I've just ordered a blade for that. So hopefully it'll be in the next few days. So when we get back to that, I'll show you how we're going to put all this together. Okay, so that's the plan for it. Sort out the grind, sort out the surface, flatten it all, and then get these on. And then we can actually, once we get the blade like to a finish, we will get this stuck on. Talking about finish and the blade, what I'm planning on doing is I'm going to sand it right down, and then I'm going to dip it in ferric chloride so that it darkens the blade. I think it'll go quite nicely with the black, well, the black pearl handles, and a darker blade. I think it'll be quite a nice contrast. So that's what I'm going to do with that. But like I say, we'll get back to that. I need to grind it first, get my table saw, cut this up, get it all together. Okay, so we'll show you that in the next bit. Okay, I'm just, excuse my hands and the camera all over the place. I've got this knife clamped down to the bench now, and as you can see, I've given it a light sand. I'm using 240 grit on a little 5mm piece of mild steel with sharp edges, and I'm just doing this basically to show you how I've made a bit of a cords of the flipping grind. I haven't actually reground it since heat treatment yet, but you can see now slightly better the differentiation between my first grind, which comes up to here, and when I attempted a second grind, which comes up to here. The second grind's all over the shop, but what I'm going to have to do is take it out, like I say, set it up in the grinder now, and I'll take it up just past this line here. Yeah, I'll sharpie it. I'll make a sharpie mark on the blade where I want the grind to come to, and I find it makes it easier when you're grinding to grind to a mark, if you like, rather than just eyeball it. So I'll do that with this, and I'll do it with the other knife that's pretty similar to this. And then what I'll do is I'll go out and I'll grind both of them. Okay. Don't need to sand the handle because it gets covered, obviously, but you do need to sand the spine and round the edges because you'll see them, obviously, And this part here where my finger is, because I did it on its edge with the small wheel attachment, it tends to be not quite as straight, shall we say, as the factory edge or like a edge that I've used the platen on, because obviously he can get the platen will contact the whole of this part, whereas a round wheel you're basically moving it up and down so it doesn't contact the whole edge at once. Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm going to continue on and sand these edges. In fact, no, I won't. I'll grind it first and then I'll sand the edges. That would make sense. So that's next on the agenda, is to grind this out. Grind this bevels out to the finish. And another thing that I'll just show you, I'll do this one-handed, is that the edge that I've got on the blade, can you see it there? Let's see if I can get some contrast or get it to focus even. There you go. I've probably got about maybe 1.5, 2, couple of millimeters there. I can take that down to 1 mil probably before I put the edge on it. It's quite a sturdy little thing, 4 millimeters thick. I'll also get rid of these pen marks when I sand the spine once I've ground it, once I've done the bevels. So I shall do the bevels and then I'll come back to you and we'll look at getting the bevels finished. What I'll do is I'll do the bevels. I'll start in an 80 grit instead of this is done in a 40 and then in 100, I think. So I'll start the higher bevel, if you like, in an 80 grit, and then I'll move it up to I think it's a 100 grit I've got, and then I've got either a 240 or a 320. I'll do that so that this edge here isn't as rough, if you like. It hasn't got so many scratches on it, and that'll just make it easier to hand sand the bevel to make it nice and flat and even. Just a quick one. I've put the secondary grind on it, shall we say, after heat treatment. Always have to make sure you keep your blades nice and cool. Dip them frequently, and it's not too bad a job, I think. It's passable, we'll say, so I'm quite happy with that. This one here, as you can still see the marks where I made a bit of a balls of it earlier, but I'm going to just keep this knife myself, so if I was that fussed about it, what I could do is I could put a secondary bevel on it and just take it up a bit just to tidy it up, but I'm really not that bothered, to be honest. So as you can see, these are now down almost to a point on the edge. This is like ready for sharpening. I'm not going to run my finger along it because I may catch a bit that's thin enough to cut. Same with this one. Grind them down to about 1 millimeter normally, and then just do the final millimeter on the sharpener. So they're all set. So I'm going to get my handles made up today. That is the plan. So I'll get the epoxy out and get busy. So my camp knife is now sitting in some ferric chloride. This is the stuff I use. Ferric chloride solution. It's like 40% or something. I've also diluted it because apparently it's meant to be the colour of tea. A half decent cup of tea, so I've put in about 30% water, probably 70% acid. I'll leave that for 10 minutes and I'll take it out and show you what it looks like. I've already sanded the blade. What did I use? 240, 320, 600. That's as far as I've gone. I've also done another grind on the blade. It's like a separate grind just to hide that horrible lines. It doesn't look that bad now, to be fair. So well, it does look a bit odd, but I'll show you it once it comes out the acid, see what you think. Okay, that's them after 10 minutes. I've given it a wipe with some 000 steel wool, this stuff here, or 00, should I say. I'm going to give it another couple of dips for 10 minutes at a time and see how dark I can get it. I want it a bit darker than this, to be fair. This is just like a grey, to be honest, so I'll stick it in again for another 10 minutes and we'll see what it looks like then. This is about the third dip I've had. You can see it's getting darker now. Seems to be a grey sort of part in the middle. I'd like to get rid of that. So I'll just keep dipping it, cleaning it, dipping it and cleaning it until I do. Just rinsing it off. We'll get this other one out. You want to wash away this yellow stains as soon as you can, because it will stain. So like I say, that's about 3 dips. You can see it's getting darker, which is what we want. That's maybe a better representation. It's definitely getting darker. I'd say another dip might be enough, and then I'll put it in coffee overnight. See what it looks like then. Okay, this is the final etch. That was a 20-minute. Kind of hard to see. It's not entirely black, but it's mostly black. There's a bit in the centre of the handle here that didn't seem etched too well. Maybe I didn't sand it down with the correct grit paper, I don't know. But the blade bit that you'll actually see, I'm pretty happy with that. So I'm going to dip it into, and get the blade in there, some coffee solution, and I'm going to leave that overnight. And then tomorrow it should be pretty much locked in, and we'll see what it looks like then. Hopefully it'll be sweet. Okay, we're away to segment up our handles with this utility knife. This utility knife. I better use the one that I'm actually made the video about. And I'm going to be using 2 materials on it. One is ebony. Nice bit of ebony from China. You can see I've marked it, and why that is because I want to mark it behind where the holes are, as you can see. So I'll cut it there, and then I'll put in a piece, probably from where it is to maybe back here, up like that, at the angle that you can see. And in between, I'm going to put some of the red, blood red Kirinite. I'll take a piece off the end here, and I'll show you how I mark that up. Really quite simple. You mark your line at the angle that you want. Here's one I prepared earlier, as I say in Blue Peter. And draw my diagonal, and to make sure that it all lines up, all you do is line it up with the piece above, and you can see I've drawn a line straight through. So I'll cut this bit, will be waste obviously, and then I'll cut a section out, probably about that size, maybe about the width of my finger or something, you know, because by the time I get the liners in as well, I'll just take up the space. Here's the liners. I'm going to cut these end bits off so that I've got 2 small bits of liner to stand on its edge. Once I put the backing on, they'll go into this liner here, should I say. I'm not going to cut it out. I just marked that up to see where it would come on the knife, you know. And I've got a blue one as well. I can't remember which one's which. The blue one looks like the shorter one, the shorter, fatter one. That'll be for this knife here, and the green one will be for this knife here. So I'm going to go out. I'm going to see how they cut with the grinder. If it just melts into a big mess, then I'll use the jigsaw. But the jigsaw seems to take forever to get through it. So chances are I'll probably use a grinder and then just tidy up the ends. I'll have a straight end on this edge, obviously, which will be fine for standing against the liner underneath it. So I'll wait to do that. Okay, I'll cut it and then I'll come back. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to epoxy it all together once I've got all these pieces cut and see what it looks like. I'll use clamps to hold it down, obviously, once it's setting. And I'm going to use greaseproof paper. And like I say, plenty of clamps. Don't want it moving while it sets. Okay, so here we are back again. I've roughly cut these out, as you can see. I've still got to square up all the edges, get all the angles spot on. And also, when you're doing this, make sure that these two centre pieces are exactly the same width, because when you turn the knife on its edge and they're not the same width, it's just going to look absolutely terrible. So I'll spend a bit of time just trimming these back on the platen until they're absolutely straight at the right angle and at the correct distance between the two. I know that these two will fit up okay because obviously I just cut them, off a square. So what I will do is I'll tidy up the ends of these as well, because obviously there's a good chance that they're not straight. 90 degrees, I can tell that one's not a kick-off. And also because you want to get a bit of a rough surface. That's quite smooth there, but it is ebony, mind. So I'll sand it until I get a bit of key for the adhesive to the epoxy to stick to, because there's not really much holding these together, it's just a little bit of epoxy on either side of the spacers and the centerpiece. So that's next on the agenda, is I've got to square all these up, measure them all, make sure they're all spot on, then we'll come back, then we'll glue them. I'm going to do the same with these up here. I'm using like I think this is like my micarta I've got, but it looks like my micarta. So I'll be putting that with the red spacers. Let me just see what that's going to look like. Could help if I got it the right way up. Excuse me. And the blue backers and blue spacers. Let's just see what it looks like. Oh, come on, you nightmare. Yeah. So I think that's going to look pretty cool, personally. But like I say, I need to square them all up. So I'm going to wait to do that, and then I'll come back and then we'll glue them. We're now ready to glue it up. I've sanded all the edges. Just used a flat board and some 240 grit. I've also sanded the edges with the green liners and the edges of the orange, the edges of the wood, just to show you. Take a bit out. You can see that's perfectly flat and straight. You don't really want gaps or anything here. It just looks terrible when it's done. You want it to be tight fitting like that. Don't know how well that's going to focus, but you need it to fit tightly. You don't want to see any gap between the liner and the wood, or the liner and the the liner and the kernite. Okay, so once you're at this stage, all you need to do is mix up your epoxy. Spread it all over, and then put your stuff down on top of the liner. Make sure you line it up at the end here, and make sure that these parts are exactly the same distance from there to there as from the top one, from there to there. Like I say, you can fix it afterwards, but it's just more pissing about. You're better getting it right to start with, So we'll get that glued on there with I'm using West 650 epoxy. It's a slow cure thing. It takes 24 hours, and I just clamp them all up. Got loads of clamps in here. Let me see. Where are we? Yeah. I just use these with a bit of cardboard under it, because the ends are quite sharp and they'll mark it. So I'll put a bit of cardboard underneath it when I clamp it to this. And also I'll use this stick. What I'll do is I'll lay it out like that, put the liner on top. Well, I'll put the greaseproof paper down first, then put the liner down, and then it gives me something to clamp to that's not too thick, you know. So my clamps can get a good hold on there to the actual liners and what have you. Okay, so I'll do that, and then I'll come back once these are all epoxied. That's them glued up and clamped. I'm putting a weight on top of these liners to hold them down, like I have here. It's just a couple of tins of brake cleaner, but it'll be enough to hold it in place, because they tend to rise if you don't hold them down with something. And I don't have any clamps left, so I'll just have to improvise, shall we say. Okay, so these are now set, as you can see, and I've roughly sanded them square, because obviously there's a load of resin and all the rest of it, and these were different heights. This acrylic was lower than the wood, so I had to get it all flat. This ebony's nice, I like it. I like the orange liners with the green as well. And as you can see, they meet up at both sides. All of them meet up at both sides, you know, which is good. That one's kind of sunk back a little bit, but by the time I sand it down, you'll see that it's the same as this side. There's a bit of a chip there or something, but that doesn't matter, because we've got the knives we'll have to take off a good bit more before we can fit them. And I've also got this excess bit at the back. This will have to be cut back, you know. So I'll get the knives out here as well. They're in here. There's one of them. So this handle will go something like that, I'd imagine. I need to square up the fronts, because they're obviously not square. So I've got a square out here. What I'll do is I'll just mark it with a pencil across at 90 degrees, and then stick it on the grinder. This is an 80 grit belt. Be better with something like a 36 or a 40, to be honest, because it takes a bit longer with the 80, and it's a bit smoother, but it takes a bit longer. But for this, you don't need it to be smooth. You only need it to be smooth when you finish them off. So get yourself a 40 grit belt. So next up, like I say, square these off at the front. Then I can place them on here and mark out roughly where they need to go, and then we'll get on to drilling them. And what I'll do is I'll use this as a guideline. You know, I'll stick it on top of the scales, whatever way it goes. It's not like that, obviously it's the other way, but anyway, just to give you an idea. And I'll just clamp it down and then just drill through the existing holes. Yeah, and then once I've done that, take the knife off, put that one on top of that one, drill through. It's better than trying to do both of them at once is always a hit and a miss whether the pins line up, you know. So you're better doing them one at a time, really, if you want them to be as accurate as they can be. So that's the next one. I'll get a 3mm drill, just run it through these holes just to make sure they're cleaned out. But yeah, I'm quite happy with the way they've turned out. So I'll get these drilled, get them squared up, and then we'll come back to the next part, which will be gluing the scales to the knife. Okay. Gluing the scales to the knife, and then we'll shape it later. Okay. You can see that I've profiled the front here. I've profiled it at an angle. I've also stuck a 45 degree just on the edge here, just to take away from the blockiness of it. I don't want to go too far back though, because then it'll get quite close to the pins. You might have a chance of the wood splitting. So I don't want to get too close. Saying that, the wood's unlikely to split, but anyway. You need to do, like I say, a lot of fit ups with these to make sure that they all line up. And as you can see with this, they do. So obviously that knife needs to go in a bit. That looks a bit off there actually. Yeah, hold on a sec. Right, I know what I've done wrong. As you can see, these don't line up at the top, but they do in the bottom. So what I've done obviously was when I lined them up at the bottom and drilled the first hole, I forgot to line them up at the top to make sure that the top two lined up as well. So the top two are slightly off. as you can see, that's fucking awful. However, there's nothing I can do about it now, so I'm just going to finish the knife and keep it for myself. A bit gutted actually, bit hacked off about that. So when you're measuring them, always make sure they line up. But like I say, there's a lot of fitting up to do when you're making these scales. So make sure you put all your pins in or old 3mm drill bits in, so that when you're drilling the holes, it doesn't move slightly, because then you'll have an absolute nightmare trying to get the pins through, especially these small ones. And especially as there's 4 of them, if you only had 2 large ones, it's a lot easier to line them up. They're not quite there, you know. So that's ruined my day, I'll be honest. That's really hacked me off. But every day is a school day, I suppose. You know, how far out is it? Probably wouldn't notice, but I would. You know, by the time it's all finished, I would certainly notice. So I'm a bit pissed off about that. However, like I say, you live and learn. That other one there, I'll check that before I put it together too. I've taken these out to the grinder and obviously ground them, but as you can see, it's going through. Obviously, it was going to go through the etching anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue that down to the end of the blade just to make it look not quite so crap. There's nothing I can do with the rest of it though. Like I say, this is the initial sand around the perimeter, the whole knife, yeah. And get the small wheel attachment on to get into these parts here. These are pretty tricky to do and to keep straight, so just be careful and take your time. And then what I've done is I've put the platen on, and in the bottom wheel of the platen, what you can do is you can look down the knife, and you can obviously, if this was the bottom platen, you could look down the knife and you can get it at like 45 degrees, and then you just pull it back and forth until you get a nice 45 degree chamfer all the way around. When you're doing these parts, be very, very careful, because it's really easy for the wheel to dig in, and you'll end up pulling bits of this kernite out and stuff. You don't want to do that, so just be very careful when you're coming around these corners. Yeah. You could even just leave them and hand sand them. Probably safer if you're a beginner like me. I had a little bit of an issue with this one. Not sure if it'll show up or not. Yeah, see that little nick there just above my thumb? You can just see it there. It's gone into the liner. I caught that with the sandpaper, with the wheel, should I say. So that's a bit of a bummer, but I'll just sand it. I'll sand it out till it reaches the, you know what I mean? I'll sand out the indent, shall we say, until it's smooth. I did the same with this one, and like I say, I've just started to round off the corners. I've still got a lot of work to do at the end here, as you can see. It's a bit wild, but I've started sanding out the corners, and I'm using 80 grit, this 80 grit stuff, just to roughly shape it. Obviously got a lot more to do than this. I'll move up through the grits. I'll go 80, probably go 240. If I've got 120, I'll use it. If I don't, I'll just go 240. It'll just take longer. And like I say, just spend your time sanding it all down, and always make sure you stick it in your hand and check it. And if it feels good in the hand, then generally it'll feel good, you know what I mean? So this is the one that I'm going to keep for myself. When I re-drilled the pins, it clearly didn't make that much difference. That bottom right one, you could possibly say slightly, maybe. Also, when you're doing this, wear a respirator mask. Don't use a dust mask, wear a breather mask with filters on it, or you'll end up like sneezing and coughing and spluttering all day, because the dust, even off the hardwood, is really not good for you. The dust off of this acrylic, I'm sure it wouldn't be good for you either, to be honest. Same when you're grinding, because the filings that come off, they can get into your lungs and cause all sorts of damage. That's the health and safety announcement for the day. But yeah, like I said, these pins It actually turned out alright in the end. I'm quite surprised actually. I expected to see one with a bit of a gap around the hole, you know. Black one, it's the same. I had to re-drill the holes in it. It turned out not bad. You know, like I say, it's rough just now, but it has got a lot more sanding to do. And you'll notice that I put a bevel on the front here before I glued it, because you can't get into these bits afterwards. Yeah, there's a little bit in the blade there. I'm not sure how I'm going to get that off. Hopefully a Stanley blade or something will take it off. So once you've ground your 45s at the front, that's pretty much them. And then you come to hand sanding, just go careful round about the front here, but make sure you go right off the edge, especially when you're sanding out your scratches at the end, because if you don't, then you'll see these scratches once it's all polished up and they'll look hideous, and you'll just have to go back and sand the whole lot again. Okay, so that's the handles on, like I say, sanded. Work your way up the grits until you get a nice finish that you're happy with and it fits good in your hand, and you think, yeah, that's not going to cause any problems. And then you're ready just to polish the handles. What I use is a soft mop and some brown paste. It brings them up nicely. And then if you want to, you can like oil the wood with boiled linseed oil or or teak oil or whatever you fancy, just to protect it slightly. And then you're away. So I've got a sheath. I'll have sheaths to make after this as well, but probably won't bother videoing that because there's plenty of videos on YouTube about how to make sheaths. Okay, so this two knives now are what I would class as virtually finished. I've gone up through the grits with the sandpaper. 240, 320, 600, 800, and then 1000. And then I've finished them off on the polishing mop. So they've turned out quite nicely. You can see the double bevel on this one. You can just see it no more. Maybe try tilt it up a bit, see if that makes any odds. Not really, because the blade's etched, it's kind of harder to see, but it's got a double bevel on it. I'll put it down here so you can see it better. Probably see it better there. Yeah, that was just to hide my balls up. When I first ground it, I tried grounding it up a bit higher, and I just ended up making a bit of a balls of it. So what I did was I just put a secondary bevel on it. I didn't want to take any more off of this edge and make it even thinner, so I just took it higher up. And I've tried to keep the two bevels the same sort of width. I mean, obviously the top one's slightly wider than the bottom one, but we can live with that. But yeah, this is the ebony one. Ebony with orange kyanite green liners. As you can see, it doesn't quite match up at the top, which I'm a bit pissed off about, because it does in the bottom. But that's my fault. I should have lined it up when I was drilling the holes. I should have lined it up properly when I was drilling the holes for it. So you live and learn, eh? You live and learn. But all these, if you look closely at it, if it'll focus, you can see the green one that's coming down here, this one where my finger is, where it meets the back liner. There's no gaps. That's what you want. You want it nice and tight there. Same with the bottom ones. No gaps there either. You know, it's turned out pretty well. Probably could have polished that bottom bit of steel there slightly better, but it'll do. I ended up polishing this part, and I ended up polishing the spine, because obviously when I did the back of it, it got polished as well, you know. So quite happy. That's just a bit of polish that's stuck on there. I'll scrape that off or polish it off. Yeah, quite happy with it overall. That one there, I like the ebony. It's really hard. It's really hard to sand. It's so oily that when you put it on the belt sander, it just clogs up the sander because there's so much oil in it. But that's probably a good thing. You know, it keeps it hard. So that's that one. Another one here is the black and red. This is the black micarta. Can't just about see it there. black micarta, and the red kerinite. It's called blood red, that one is. But it's the same again, sanded through the grits, polished the back of the spine. Quite happy with it. The bottom one on this side, for some reason, looks a bit further forward at this end here. I don't know why, because they're both measured exactly the same width. What does it look like in the top? Oh, it matches up. That's a boost, you know. But it can all be just as much as to do with the angle that you put the thing, you know, that it'll obviously make it look bigger at one end than the other. Because if you're putting a straight and you're cutting a 45, you know, if you like cut it slightly off, the distance is going to be shorter. So that's that one there. It's just got a single bevel on it. It's sharp as. It just needs a final touch in the sharpener once I get my sharpening jig thing sorted out for my belt grinder. But as you can see there, it's got a nice little sheen in it. It's not too shiny, it's not too polished. And it just feels nice, smooth, and feels nice in the hand as well. So that's that one. I still need to give the blade a bit of a clean. So, but yeah, I'm happy with both of them. So if you like this sort of content, then put a like down the bottom, subscribe, and I'll post some more. I've got 2 bushcrafting knives just now that I've just epoxied the handles onto. They're getting done next. I'll get the knife sharpening jig sorted out, and I can give these a final sharpen, and then that'll be them done, bar the sheaths, which I haven't made yet. But yeah, happy with that. So I'll put them in the box of many delights and call it a day. So if you like that, if you like this content, like I say, consider liking and subscribing down the bottom, and I'll post some more. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks for following. Thanks for subscribing if you have. I really do appreciate it. I'll see you for the next one.